Greetings and welcome to VALO U. I'm Xelaadryth and I'll be your instructor for today. Today's class is Macro 210, Gun Advantage. When you're on a buy round and enemies are on a save round, you naturally expect to have gun advantage because you have more money. But gun advantage does not just mean pricier guns. Gun advantage means having the better weapons for a specific situation and usually involves effective range. For instance, a shorty is probably more useful in a Viper pit than an operator, despite the huge price discrepancy. To maximize gun advantage, you want to set up situations and position in ways that increase the chances of engagements happening at ranges your weapon is favored over the enemy. The first hurdle to overcome to use gun advantage successfully is a mental one. You might become complacent, thinking you've already won the round because you have guns that are better in most situations and just play the round out like normal. However, you can always improve the chances of winning the round by playing to your strengths. Anything that increases your chances of winning is useful, and keeping more members of your team alive while winning also lets you store creds for a rainy day in later rounds. But without further ado, let's take a look at the measurable stats that define gun advantage. In general, weapons with longer range cost more money for equivalent power. For instance, a shorty can only one-shot at hyper-close range, but an operator can one-shot at any range. This means a team with more money will almost always have gun advantage at mid and long ranges in terms of regular weapon stats like range damage fall-off, accuracy, and fire rate. For instance, even though you might think of a sheriff as a long-range weapon, the damage fall-off to 145 at greater than 30 meters means a headshot won't kill against full armor. Comparing it to a guardian, it has less damage per bullet, less ammo, lower fire rate, and worse accuracy, only outperforming the Guardian in moving accuracy, so you'd prefer the Guardian in every situation over the Sheriff. In fact, the only stats that cheaper gun types like SMGs, shotguns, and pistols tend to reliably have over pricier ones are related to mobility, movement speed, and/or moving accuracy, which we'll cover more in a separate class. However, this means that we still need to be at close range to squeeze every last bit of value out of our cheaper guns. So let's take a look at how to optimize your encounter range to suit your weapons. The first approach is to just use what's already there on the map. If you have gun advantage at long range, you'll want to prefer to take fights on these longer sightlines to either take space or deny space from the enemy, which will allow you to gain advantages through map control and information denial before you even risk entering close quarters. If your weapon is better off at close range, you can still deal with long angles by simply jump peeking for information rather than truly challenging the angle, letting you maintain info while putting yourself at little risk. One way you can think about long-range gun advantage is to just pretend for a moment that the entire enemy team has shorties, and consider how that impacts your team's macro decisions. The long sightlines of the map become easy to peek and take, whereas places like Garage and A sewers become extra spooky all of a sudden. While the shorty example is an exaggeration for demonstration, you'll still have gun advantage taking these long-range fights, even if the advantage is rifle vs marshal or sheriff. At closer ranges though, since time to kill drops drastically, lower mag size, accuracy, and damage of weaker weapons become less important, as even a classic can one-shot with a lucky right-click. Every long-range angle inevitably has to come to a close in a close-range zone with corners, cover, or choke points, so think about using these even if they're one-and-done spots. Remember that map layout is important not just on the macro level but at the tactical level. Try to position your cover and path in a way that lets you fight at a range best suited for your gun. If you have defender's advantage, you can choose the line of sight where first contact will be made, letting you match the range of engagement to optimize for your gun choice. Even if you don't start with defender's advantage, you can still flip it around by taking space and then encouraging enemies to move through your territory. But how do we take that space in the first place? One of the most powerful ways to create battlefields of your choosing is through the use of smokes. While there are numerous natural long angles, we can artificially cut them down to shorter angles by smoking off the long sightlines. This may make some sight takes multi-part. One step to cut the long angles down and move in close, the second step to actually take the site. In this example, I smoke off Haven B, denying them info mid as we close in, and then we surprise them with a contact play and explode out onto B, making all possible fights relatively close range, unless they pushed mid through garage doors or through the B smoke early in the round. You could also use smokes to section a site into a smaller area to cut off longer sightlines, though there are other risks with this strategy. The area within a smoke is also its own close quarter zone to play in, making defensive safety smokes extremely useful for close range weapon users while simultaneously helping with numbers advantage. Other utility can also help with fights at a disadvantaged range. For instance, when challenging a long range angle with short range weapons, you can use flashes to buy you time to close some distance before they re-peek, use ISO's moving wall to advance, use stuns, slows, or mollies to discourage the enemy from peeking, etc. On the other hand, if you have long-range guns and are trying to challenge close corners, investing scouting util like Sova Drone, Fade Prowler, etc. can make it a lot easier to fight through to the next long-range area. Think of utility as a resource that you can spend for a temporary advantage. You'll usually want to use it to counter your opponent's win conditions, like ranges where they'll have gun advantage. For instance, flashing a long angle when you have rifles versus classics isn't maximizing its value, since they're unlikely to effectively contest the angle even without the flash. But flashing a choke point into close angles can give your team a boost where your gun advantage is not as pronounced. You can also just gamble that enemies won't punish you when you're at gun disadvantage. For instance, a common strategy on Ascent is to smoke mid-arch and walk up cat, hoping that if someone swings through your smoke or swings cat, that you'll either have made it far up enough to be at better range, or that your numbers advantage will make up for your gun disadvantage. Also, don't forget that a great way to combat gun disadvantage is to remove the disadvantage. Taking enemy guns is a great sub-goal for the round, which will then let you challenge longer angles later in the round without gun disadvantage, or letting another teammate pick up your hero gun if you die. On the flip side, if you're the team with gun advantage, try to play in areas where even if you die, enemies won't be able to easily or safely retrieve your gun. In summary, gun advantage is about having the better weapon for a specific engagement, and isn't just about having the more expensive gun. The first step to playing around gun advantage is a mental hurdle of not just considering the round over before it begins, instead playing to maximize your advantage and holding on to as many rifles as you can while winning. Usually the team with more money will have gun advantage at the mid and long ranges because longer range weapons cost more. Cheaper weapons tend to be shorter range but may have more mobility, increasing effectiveness at close ranges. You should play areas of the map that are suitable for the strengths and weaknesses of your weapon. Defender's advantage lets you choose the range of engagement. You can use smokes to carve the battlefield into smaller sections to avoid long-range angles and force closer range engagements. Utility can be used to provide a temporary advantage when your guns aren't as advantaged for a situation. You can gamble on not getting punished for moving through areas where you're at gun disadvantage or rely on other advantages instead. And planning out how to fight for and take enemy guns is a great sub-goal for the round to remove some of your gun disadvantage. That's all for today's lesson. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the lecturer or the TAs in the comments below. Thanks for attending, and we hope you enjoy your stay here. VALO U.
Remaining.
55, 55, 55. Good job.
What's another death? My ultimate is ready.